Vince Lombardi all made the cut. But Shannon, I'm curious, who are the 4 NFL coaches on your Mount Rushmore?
Skip, for me, 3 were very, very easy. Coach Lombardi, the trophy is named after him. I don't know how you have a Mount Rushmore if he isn't on it. 5 championships in 7-year span. Bill Belichick, we know. We don't have to say anything. Bill Walsh for me. 3 Super Bowls in the 80s. It would have been a 4th had he stayed because he ended up turning that team over, and they won the Super Bowl again in 89. The West Coast offense is alive and well. All of it, the Toolish, the guys that came from that tree. So for me, those 3 are easy. Skip, I had a hard time with the 4th guy that was going to go on this list, and it was between Chuck Noll and Don Shula. And Skip, Coach Noll won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years during the 70s. But in 37 years of coaching, Coach Shula only had 2 losing seasons, and he had a perfect season. So with that, I went with Coach Shula. He had great quarterbacks, Skip. He went from Johnny Unitas to Bob Greasy to Dan Marino. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But the all-time winningest coach in NFL history, 37 years, 2 losing seasons, 2 Super Bowls, a perfect season. I went with him slightly over Coach Noll.
Okay. My 4 are Bill Walsh, number 1 on my list. Coach Shula definitely made it. Vince Lombardi, and you were back and forth between Noll, Shula. Chuck Noll is on my list. I have 2 glaring omissions. No Tom Landry and no Bill Belichick. I will get to those in one moment. But a quick point, I've told you from the start, Bill Walsh is the greatest coach ever. To me, I had the privilege of getting to know him when I was in the Bay Area. I spoke to his classes twice, actually, at Stanford Business School. He was genius. He did invent that offense, and he wasn't great at picking players as the draft master. He was all-time great. Coach Shula, remember, won championships with 2 different quarterbacks. He actually won with Earl Morrall, first in Baltimore, an NFL championship, and then with Bob Greasy, 2 Super Bowls. But he got to another Super Bowl with David Woodley, and then another Super Bowl, obviously, with Dan Marino, and pulled off maybe the greatest regular season upset in NFL history when his team beat the Bears. Remember in that Monday night game, the 85 Bears lost 1 game, went 15-1. Yep. And they lost at Miami on December the 2nd in a Monday night game. The point is that Walsh, then Shula, Lombardi, as you say, enough said, and Chuck Noll, when you go 4 out of 6 years with Super Bowls, even though I thought those were a couple of the most talented teams I ever saw on a football field, it's just hard to win, go 4 for 4 in Super Bowls, so I'm good with that. Now, Tom Landry. I wrote a book centered around Tom Landry called God's Coach, 1989. It was about the rise and fall of Tom Landry. And my takeaway from my book and my research, Shannon, is that Roger Staubach made Tom Landry. Roger Staubach ignored a lot of the plays called by Tom Landry and pulled off in each of those big moments some of the greatest plays in Cowboy history. He was the leader. He got them over the top. They were the lovable losers for a long time under Don Meredith and then Craig Morton. And it was Roger who took that team home. It was Roger who did it, not Coach Landry. And that's just me. And I will stand by that. Read God's Coach. Now, to Bill Belichick. Here's my issue with him. Show me how he was great without Tom Brady, because all I see is he was a head coach in Cleveland for 5 years, and he had 4 losing seasons and got fired and had a total record of 36-44 as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Then he goes to New England and goes 5-11 in his first year. And then he goes 0-2 to start his second year before Tom Brady fell out of the sky into his lap out of the 6th round. Pre-Tom Brady starting, Bill Belichick was 41-57 as a head coach. That's 16 games under 500 And assistants will tell you on that staff that year, they thought they were going to get fired as a group because it looked like they were headed for another 5-11 type season with Drew Bledsoe at quarterback. What proof do I have that Belichick is greater than Tom Brady? I've told you from the start, it's 75% Brady, 25% Belichick. I will give you the first Super Bowl. That was a great defensive game plan. But one Super Bowl does not Mount Rushmore make. Not for me, because after that, it was all Brady. Even all the way to the last Super Bowl that they won over the Rams, that was a defensive struggle on both sides because Wade Phillips has always been Brady's nemesis. He had a top 3 defense that year and then going into that Super Bowl. And it was pretty easy to shut down Jared Goff because he's been exposed. He's not all that. So Belichick did a nice job with his defense in the Super Bowl. Wade Phillips did a great job. But finally, Tom Brady cracked the code in the fourth quarter and completed 5 straight passes to go down with 29-yarder to Gronk that set up the 2-yard run that broke the 3-all tie and won the game. I don't see enough of Belichick's greatness. Maybe if he does start building another Super Bowl team in the next year or two, you got me. I'll put him up in place of Chuck Noll on the Mount Rushmore. But right here, right now, I haven't seen enough of him, and I have seen enough of Tom Brady to think Belichick's being overrated if you're going to all of a sudden just lift him up onto Mount Rushmore.
Well, Skip, it's not very many coaches that's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The only 2 that comes to my mind right now currently is Bill Parcells and Joe Gibbs that got to the Hall of Fame without a Hall of Fame quarterback. So if we look at it, if we look at Coach Lombardi, when he went to Washington, he didn't have the same success in Washington as he had in Green Bay. And Skip, Chuck Noll had 10 of his 22 starters are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Skip, that's unheard of. Let that sink in. So you got a roster. You got 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense. 10 are in the Hall of Fame, and you know you can make a case for L.C. Greenwood because he's the all-time leader in sacks in Pittsburgh. Yep. Andy Russell's not in, but he can make a case. So when you got that many guys, he got them there. There are a lot of guys that had talent that didn't win. But true. I don't know if we've ever seen this kind of talent, Skip, on one team. And guess what? You will never see another team that has 10 Hall of Famers playing at one particular time, Skip, and they're in their prime. Skip, we've seen guys come in at the tail end. He ends up being a Hall of Famer, but he's not the guy. Skip, he had these guys in their prime. All of these guys were no more than 3 years apart in age, 3 to 4 years tops in age. That's unheard of.
Okay. So you got me. And I struggle with Paul Brown because I always hear he's one of the greatest coaches. The Dallas Morning News put him on its Mount Rushmore. And yet I don't know enough. It's ahead of, it's before my time. I looked at the record last night. He won a bunch of championships in the pre-NFL league. I can't remember what the name of it was. Then he won a couple of NFL championships. I always read that the players despised him because he was such a tyrant and dictator and pushed them so hard. But he did a lot of great things, and he built a legacy, obviously, that endured for a long time. But I don't know him well enough to say he's a Mount Rushmore coach.
I don't either, Skip. I know with Otto Graham, he won they went to 10 straight championships. They won a bunch of them. I think they won 6 and 7, and then he won, I think, again with Jim Brown. But Skip, for me, when you look at Coach Belichick, the 6 titles, and then he won 2 as a defensive coordinator. Skip, he's arguably the greatest defensive mind in the history of the game. Now, obviously, you look at Rod Rust. I think he was the D coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, we look at Buddy Ryan and what he was able to do with the '85 Bears. But Skip, it's just hard for me with a guy that has 6 titles and 9 Super Bowl appearances and has 2 as a defensive coordinator, and he lost another one. I don't think it was the D coordinator, Skip, in '96. I think Al Grove was the D coordinator. I think he came back, and Coach Belichick was the defensive back coach, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Maybe DB or linebacker coach. But his resume, but I think for me, Skip, Lombardi and Bill Walsh, we can debate everybody else, but I think those 2 have to be up. They have to be on the mountain.
I am with you on that. And yet, Shannon, if your man Bill Belichick wins the division this year with Jared Stidham, and then let's say wins the Super Bowl next year with Jared Stidham, I'm done. It's over. He's Mount Rushmore.
Skip, if he wins a Super Bowl with Jared Stidham, nobody else can go on the mountain. The whole mountain got to be carved with Coach Belichick's face. If he wins a Super Bowl with Jared Stidham, everybody else come up. We're going to sandblast the other three, and it's just going to be a big old thing. It's going to be like Stone Mountain with Stonewall Jackson on the side of that horse in Stone Mountain. That's going to be Coach Belichick's face on Mount Rushmore.
Good luck.
It's my visual right now. All right, guys, we could have a whole different view tomorrow on the NFL playoffs because tonight the NFL schedule is released. Skip and Shannon.